Gravity. A Heavy Lesson, Part 2. In this lesson we'll talk about finding orbital speeds. Recall, Little Prince wants to know how fast do we need to throw an object such as a rock or a ball so it goes around his world and comes right back again in a perfect circle. If he throws it any faster, it'll go in an ellipse. Well, the Little Prince knows that a circular acceleration relates to speed you throw divided by the radius of the orbit that the object goes in. Or as we can see from here. Now if it's going in an orbit, it's being whipped around by the force of gravity. So the acceleration is from the force of gravity. And we know by Newton's law of gravity, we can relate acceleration to the mass of the world and the size of the orbit it's going around. Now, by substitution, knowing the acceleration for a circular orbit relates to gravity, we can solve for the speed that would need to be a ball or a rock to be thrown around the Little Prince's world. This means that if the Little Prince knew the mass of his world and can measure the size of the orbit, he would know exactly the speed it would need to be to throw to go into that orbit of size s. But the Prince doesn't know the mass of his world. We'll see in Lesson 3 a few ways he figures out how to calculate it. Notice from this formula that the orbital speed is less than the escape speed, as it should be. And we see the escape speed is root 2 times the orbital speed, or roughly 40% more. Now, looking at our formula again for a circular orbit for its speed relating to gravity, we know that speed or velocity is distance per time. What distance are we talking about? The distance going around in a circle, the time it takes. So 2 pi times s, the circumference, capital T for the time it takes to go around in one circle or one orbit. Now by substitution, we can relate the period to the size of the radius of the orbit and connect that to gravity. Now rearranging, we see that the cube of the size of the cube of the radius of the orbit that the rock will go in relates to the square of the period. This is known as Kepler's third law. Now the Little Prince knows that if he watches rocks go around other worlds, such as moons around planets or planets around stars, the timing the period it takes for those objects to go around, if they go around in a circle of size of radius s, you can figure out the mass of the planet, the mass of the star. But again, the Little Prince doesn't know the mass of his world. He can throw his rock and time how long it takes to go around and measure the size of the circular orbit, but that's just simply too hard and too inexact. In Lesson 3, we'll see how the Prince does figure out the mass of his world, so he can figure out the orbital speed needed for it to go in a perfect circle or for it to escape. Onwards to Lesson 3.